Good morning. As Caleb mentioned earlier, I've been given the privilege to continue what has been a tremendous series through the book of Daniel. And so I'm going to start that in just a minute. But while folks are still collecting those buckets, I just want to say, other than being Caleb's dad, one of my jobs in this world is to be a superintendent, a bishop for our church west of the Mississippi, all the churches. And I just want you all to know what's happening here at Uncharted is told about all over the place, from Alaska to Utah to Iowa. Churches are praying for you and celebrating the 150 people who have come to Christ already. Just so grateful for what's happening, and thanks for being a part of it. Today, what I want to do, I'm going to start with a story from the book of Daniel. Will primarily be in the 5th chapter of Daniel. But whenever you read a story in the Old Testament, the Old Covenant part of Scriptures, that's intended to be a picture in terms of Jesus' teaching for our lives, okay? So we're going to read a story, and we're going to read about a time 600 years before Christ, so a really long time ago. And some of that is, of course, different than the way we live now, but it's important not to discount it for that reason. And so once we're done with the story, then I want to give to you a practice that has had a massive impact on my life, the practice of confession. And it has led in my life and so many people who've walked this life following Christ to a life of freedom and joy like maybe you've never had the chance to experience. So stay with me through the story, and it's a fascinating story. And then we've got to face a couple hard truths. And once we do that, we can talk about a practice that leads to a way of living life with God that is massively awesome, in my opinion. Okay, so first the story. We're going to get to Daniel in just a minute, because in Daniel chapter 5, we get the inside story in the city of Babylon, which is about to be destroyed. But let me give you the outside story. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of this, the original king of this empire, had come. He captured the Hebrews, people we now refer to as Jews, God's chosen people to be a model to the world. Nebuchadnezzar had captured them, brought some of them back. We know about 4 guys that he brought back. Pastor Caleb did an awesome job last week of talking about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and their faith. He captures them, brings them back, and we learn to live a life of faith through the challenges that they face. That goes so well that Nebuchadnezzar, the king, becomes somebody who honors God with his life and follows God. It's a tremendous faith story, but when we get to Daniel chapter 5, Nebuchadnezzar is long since dead. His grandson Belshazzar is now the emperor, the king, and he has forsaken God in massively public ways. He's impoverished the people of the whole empire, including the great city of Babylon, and he's rejected God again and again and again and refused any repentance. And so we get to one night in the life of Babylon. Stop there for a minute. Darius the Mede, Cyrus the Persian have amassed a massive army, and they're gradually constricting this whole empire of Babylon, taking outpost after outpost. They've now come to this great city, one of the ancient wonders of the world. It's the last city for them to take. And then Babylon will be no more. But the problem is, the city of Babylon is surrounded by walls that literally are impossible for this army to get through. Walls 320 feet wide, 82 or 86 feet tall. They try time again. Nothing's going to happen. The city has prepared for this. They've got provisions for years. They've got springs within the city for water. It seems to be over until one night, Cyrus gets an idea. We don't know for sure. It's too far back. Historians disagree, but at some point, an advisor comes to him and says, let's literally dry up the river that goes into Babylon, and let's create a dry riverbed that from the other side will allow us to come in. So they literally begin doing that at night under the cover of darkness. They divert the river that flows through the city from one end. And in the middle of the night, they have an army prepared to come in the other end. Now you say, well, why hadn't somebody thought of this before? Well, because it's easily defeated. Nebuchadnezzar had put along the river inside the city these massive walls, and any army that came through a dry riverbed would be just in a trap and would be easily defeated, except Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, has become so flagrant towards God and towards anything that could get him. He's now become this person who just leads drunken orgies day in and day out. And that's what we read about in Daniel chapter 5. The whole city, it seems, is inebriated. There's just parties going on. They're laughing at any danger. They're not taking anything seriously. They're not paying attention. And when Cyrus brings his army in, nobody's there to do anything about it. That's what's going on outside. That's the day that we're in when we read Daniel chapter 5. Let's read Daniel chapter 5. We'll walk through this. So, we'll start in verse 13. And somebody gets Belshazzar's attention at a party and points out to him that on a wall there's a hand and it's just writing. There's no arm. There's no person. A hand is writing, and the hand disappears, and the writing is left there. And in verse 13, when Belshazzar is freaked out by this, the queen comes to him and says, I have heard that the Spirit of God is in this one named Daniel. This one named Daniel. He says, I've heard that the Spirit of God is in you. He's talking to Daniel, and that you have insight, intelligence, and outstanding wisdom. So the queen comes and says, you should bring this really old guy that we've forgotten. He's 84 years old. Bring him in. And so the queen brings him in, and again, Belshazzar says, I've heard God's in you. And then the wise men and enchanters, Belshazzar says, were brought before me to read this writing on the wall and tell me what it means. But they could not explain it. Now I have heard that you are able to give interpretations and to solve difficult problems. If you can read this writing and tell me what it means, you'll be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around your neck, and you'll be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom. He promises Daniel this. I've heard... Daniel answers the king, you may keep your gifts for yourself and give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing for you, the king, and tell you what it means. But you, Belshazzar, his son, have not humbled yourself, though you knew all this. Let me stop there for a minute. Because Belshazzar's grandfather had repented, had confessed. Daniel says, unlike him, you haven't. You continue to live not honoring God with your life. He says, you, Belshazzar, his son, have not humbled yourself, though you knew all this. Instead, you've set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. You had the goblets from his temple brought to you, and your nobles and your wives and your concubines, you drank from them. You praise the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which cannot see or hear or understand. You did not honor the God who holds in his hand your life and all your ways. Therefore, he sent the hand that wrote the inscription. That hand, that was from God, he says. This is the inscription that was written. Minne, tekel, parsin, which means numbered. Minne, numbered, appointed. Your days have been numbered. You've been appointed for this day. Your life was on a calendar. Your role in life, it's been appointed to you, and God has taken account, numbered your days. Your days are numbered. And then the next is weighed. You've been weighed, like you've been evaluated. And then the next is the word broken. You've been judged or broken. That very night, Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, was slain. So Belshazzar hears this, numbered, weighed, and broken. And a few hours later, Cyrus's army makes its way to the palace, and he's killed that night. So let's stop here for a moment. This is kind of a heavy scene in the book of Daniel. When Pastor Caleb and I were putting together this teaching series and he appointed me to teach this one, I wanted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That's a better one. Wasn't that a great one? I did not want where God kills the guy because of judgment, right? But such as it is. And it brings out, remember I said the story, and now the reality, and that is that all of us in this room will stand before a perfect God, and we will be judged. I will have a moment in my life where my life will be reviewed, and it will be reviewed by the one who knows every thought I've ever thought, knows every word I've ever said. And I will tell you at that point, I will come up wanting. You don't know me well, but if you did know me well, you'd say that won't go well. There'll be a review, and it won't be a great performance review. And it'll be a very serious thing. I will stand in judgment of the one who is ultimately perfect and just and created me to be so. And I, when I'm numbered and when I'm weighed, I will be sentenced broken. And Belshazzar is on that night, and my day's coming, and your day's coming. Now this teaching, I promise, is going to get better, okay? But it's really, really important that we set in moments like this, because fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom. Awe and respect of our Maker. It leads to life, I promise, but you can't skip the awe. You can't skip the fear. It is for real. This will really happen over and over again. The Scriptures teaches us, Jesus teaches us, and this is a picture, you see, of a real man in a real time who flaunted God, and when confronted with his sin, chose to continue to flaunt and reject the God who made him. And it was a real deal, and he really did die, and his end is not good. So we set for a moment, recognizing that there is a real God who is a real judge, who does have a standard of which you and I, we have not met. We have not met. But setting in that moment, you and I know something that even Daniel did not know, and that is that God would send his only begotten Son, right? We know this now. And this Son would say, it's for real. It's for real, Wes, what you have done. It's for real that you stand in judgment. But this only begotten Son would say, I'll bleed for you. I'll take that penalty. If you will turn, if you will repent, I will take your place. I'll take your place. And I don't know about you, but I just don't get tired of celebrating that and remembering that and honoring a Jesus Christ who bled for me. And so many of you, 150 and more, have said, yes, I accept your forgiveness on the cross. And this is why we do. This is why, this is what we're about, right? This is it. But one more thing, as I follow Christ now, as a forgiven person, as one who, when I face his judgment, because I have made that decision and I have accepted Christ and asked for his forgiveness, now as a Christ follower, now as a forgiven person, the problem for me is I don't just automatically, on that moment when I made that decision, I didn't just stop sinning. Yeah, I said it. You don't have to yet. I'm going to actually ask you to in just a minute. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I still can't quite stop. And there has to be in my life a practice that I go through to be washed clean and to be reconciled again to the Father. Let me explain. Now, positionally, I'm a forgiven person. I'm on my way to heaven. I've accepted his forgiveness. And I don't have to worry if this afternoon I'm in a conversation with you and I don't tell the truth, and then I fall asleep and forget to confess, and Jesus comes back in the middle of the night. I don't have to worry about that. I'm not going to heaven. I'm forgiven. I'm living in God's grace. But here's the difference. Relationally, I've put enmity again between God and I, and I've got to clean that up, and I've got to keep living in grace and freedom. You see, I'm a married person as well. And this analogy is not a perfect example, but I think it helps. You see, Christine and I have committed our lives to one another. Till death do us part, we've made this commitment. And we're going to be faithful one to another and always put the other's needs ahead of ours. But sometimes I don't do that right. Right? Some of you, if you've been married, you can nod. It's okay. Because you screw up. Okay, so probably sometime this week, actually probably sometime in the next 2 hours is the truth, I'll do something. And it won't mean that we're no longer married. It won't mean that I hope that she's going to leave me or that I'm going to right. But what it will mean is that there's going to have to be a moment of I'm sorry, right? Because we got to reestablish that relationship. And when I don't go through the practice of confession, I cut off the blessing and the intimacy that I live with from my Father in heaven who created me. And that has to be dealt with. So I want to teach today, real briefly, a practice of confession that has really shaped my life, that I think can really shape your life. And it's a daily practice for me. It's what Jesus teaches us in the Lord's Prayer. Forgive me today my sins. Okay? So some of you are here, though, and you maybe need to hear 1 John chapter 1, verses 8 through 10. Now, we didn't put it on the screen because actually what I'd really like for you to do is I'd love for you to get out whatever it is that you carry. Maybe if you brought the Bible, great, but most of us get this out and go to 1 John chapter 1, verse 8, and leave this up on your phone in some form this week. You might type in 1 John 1:8 in your search, and just pull that up. And I'm going to read it, but hopefully you'll have that on your phone for the rest of it. It says, if we claim, he's writing to Christ followers. This is the New Testament. This is a follower of Jesus writing. If we claim to be without sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. Stop there for just a moment. Here's what you need. If you are here today and you know, sometimes in church we're in church, there's sinners outside the church and okay, let's just dispel that. Matter of fact, here, can you do this for me? If you came alone, you don't need to do this, but if you're sitting with somebody you know, you need to be set with somebody you know. Don't do this to a complete stranger, please. But if you're sitting to somebody you know, can you just look over at them and just say, I'm a real sinner. Can you do that? I'm a real sinner. Now, you don't need to agree with the person aggressively. You don't need to confess deep stuff right now. This is not for that. You don't need to say, yes, you are. I'm seeing some of that go on. We don't need to do any of that. Yeah, I got some pointing going on. I unleashed something I didn't expect to today, but you get what I'm saying. The Bible, Yes, you are. Then, verse 9, if we confess our sins, he's faithful and just to forgive us our sins. That's what he said. So if you go through the process of confession, there's just this cleansing. The relationship becomes right again, right? He says that. Then he says, and you will be purified from all unrighteousness. Oh, there's a process, and it works in my life, that God grows me and gets rid of that junk, and I become better. Not because of my effort, because it opens the channel of his grace. See, he gives me more and more grace as I confess, and I get better and better able not to do that thing again. And my relationships get, just the world, just life, it's better through this process. Okay? So let me walk you through sort of 4 steps, 4 levels. So here's, how do I explain this? Sometimes I remember it this way. This is, maybe this is just for me. When I was, I probably was 21 years old. My brother and I were driving to work in separate vehicles. And we got into a bit of a competition. I don't even know if I should tell this because there's maybe young people here and you're learning to drive. Don't do this. Bad. Okay, all bad. But we were racing, and we didn't notice, but a game fish and parks person was on the road, and we didn't even know that a game fish and parks person can pull you over, but they can, as it turns out. And lights come on, and all this stuff starts to happen. We're pulled over, all this. And he begins a significant lecture, very angry with what he observed. And then he calls in, and a squad car comes in, and he goes to do his thing. And it was a bad deal. Squad car comes in and sits with us, but turns out the police officer didn't like the Game Fish and Parks guy and said, now, young guys, you're going to have to really watch out for him and really drive carefully for a few months, but I'm going to let you off. We're like, wow, right? Grace, undeserved grace, right there. Rarely have I discovered this, but got it. Right? And so we drive off like 4 miles under the speed limit. But he warned us, this guy's going to be looking for you when he finds out, and he'll probably pull you over for a ticket. So for like 3 months, we hid our vehicles in garages. We drove super careful. Right? This is how Christians live. Right? Because we've prayed the prayer of forgiveness. Jesus is in our lives. We're forgiven, right? But now it's like, okay, but now, right? But shoot, like that was clearly wrong. And I definitely lied there. And oh boy, God, and what, like a moment of forgiveness, but we're not living in it. There's just not this freedom. And this practice of confession, you see, it opens God and me up to this conversation. It's the way to live. So number one is and I've helped you do it already, I acknowledge my sin. I don't explain it or excuse it. I acknowledge it. When I do something wrong and I become aware of it, I find a way to seriously take a moment. And I have a practice in my life where I have time for this daily, because I'm probably worse than you, so I need it a lot. But I have this daily where I acknowledge, I got that wrong today, I got that wrong today. Father, forgive me my trespasses, forgive me my sins. And a lot of times that involves going to somebody and say, hey, I got that wrong today. I want to acknowledge that. It's so easy to say what we do wrong is bad parenting or bad indigestion from pizza the night before or something, right? Here's why I was having a bad day. No, just like I was wrong. I was wrong. Acknowledge. Second, I've got to perceive it. I've got to see it. I've got to take some moment. It's not just a quick deal like I hurt you and I'm wrong, move on. No, I see how that was wrong. I take a moment. Jesus has this really cool analogy about sometimes we have logs in our own eye and we're picking a speck out of somebody else's eye, and he talks about, why don't you deal with the log the size of a canoe in your own eye first, right? Just see some stuff. See the damage you're doing. Just see it for a minute. Just see it. Yeah, they probably have stuff too. That's not the deal right now. The deal is just see it. Just see it. And take a moment and just see it. So I acknowledge I did this wrong. And I see the consequences. I ask myself a couple questions, like, why did I do it? What insecurity or fear or pride or ego or whatever, what made me lie right there? Why did I lie? And then what damage did it do? Like, how did it hurt? How did it cause dysfunction? What did it, like maybe with Christine, like, how did it break down intimacy? Like, what did it do? I see it. Then the third thing is I take a moment and feel it. I feel it. Like, I want to deeply experience the pain I caused. Not forever. I'll get to that in just a second. Not forever. But I want to feel it. I want there to be some emotion. I don't want to rush through it because I want to know Jesus hurt for me because of this. And I'm hurting people. It hurts when I sin. Somebody's life is less because of me, right? I just feel it for a moment. Now I want to be careful here because there's two kinds of people I'm talking to. And we're on one side of the line. Some of you, when it comes, like, you feel bad about everything. Like, if you forgot to tip the barista, you lose sleep, right? Like, if you accidentally cut somebody off in traffic, you really would love it if the two of you could stop and you could apologize right there in real time. Like, that's what you'd hope to do. You feel bad about what you do and other people do, and you internalize that, and you've got to remember this whole practice is a practice of grace. You confessing perfectly has nothing to do with whether God forgives you. God forgives you. You're forgiven. This is just to open up the river between you and God of intimacy, and you do not need to take responsibility any longer or any more than just owning it and living in it for a moment. However, there's others of you, you cut people off in traffic, you're like, where'd you learn to drive, buddy? Like, you don't feel bad. You don't like introspection all that much. Don't feel it's all that needed. And it takes a lot for you to say, yeah, that's on me. That's not a common thing for you, right? How many of you would say you're more on the feel it deeply for stuff? Would you be willing to raise your hand? A few of you here. How many of you, when I give those two, you're not really sure which you are? Would you, if you don't know? You're probably on the side of the feel too bad, would be my guess, right? How many of you just know, how many of you know somebody who takes too much responsibility? Would you be willing to raise your hand if you know somebody? Yeah, you're probably one of the people who doesn't take enough responsibility. That's probably who you are. So if you just raised your hand, that's one way of knowing. You don't take enough responsibility. Okay. So it's important in this moment to feel it and feel the pain, but it's important not to live in it, because this is the point. I feel that moment. I confess it. And then fourth, I make a commitment. I make a commitment. In my life, it's real important that I make a commitment to somebody else, not just in my head all the time. Because commitments made in my head, I don't follow through with. I can be weak. So I commit to God. I commit to another person that I don't want to feel that pain again. I don't want to cause that pain again. I'm going to be better. Sometimes I do it again. And I go through the same process. But I want to tell you, at the end of this regular pattern, boy, I wish I could put this in words. Me and God are good, I guess is the way I'd say it. me and got her good again. I was always on my way to heaven. But God can just flow back into me. The power and the intimacy and the strength. Okay, now you're going to leave today saying that guy's a little, whatever. Because as part of it for me, I've learned this practice. Max Lucado, a few of you have probably heard of Max Lucado. A long time ago, he wrote a children's book trying to kind of explain the way you let this go and the way you feel good with God again. And for me, it's part of the way I end this journey and my life. And I want to read this story to you. If it's been like several decades since you've read a children's book, can you let go of your adult sort of coolness for just a minute and read this? Or maybe you want to, if you have kids or grandkids, read it to them and then really be reading it for yourself, but you'll feel good because you're reading it to a kid. But let me read it. I've written it down. It's so crucial for me. The Wemmicks were small wooden people. All the wooden people were carved by a woodworker named Eli. His workshop sat on a hill overlooking their village. Each Wemmick was different. Some had big houses, some had large eyes, some were tall, others short, some wore hats and others wore coats, but all had the same carver named Eli. All day, every day, the Wemmicks did the same thing. They gave each other stickers. Each Wemmick had a box of gray dot stickers and golden star stickers. Up and down the street, people spent their days sticking stars or dots on one another. The pretty ones had smooth, fine wood, and they always got the stars. But if the wood was rough or the paint was peeling, the Wemmick gave each other dots. The talented ones got stars too. They could lift big sticks or sing pretty songs or use big words. Some could jump large boxes, and they always got the stars. Some Wemmicks had stars all over them, and did it make them feel really good. It made them want to do something else to get other stars from more Wemmicks. Other Wemmicks, though, they could do little, and they got a lot of dots. Pocatello was one of these other Wemmicks. He tried to jump high like the others, but he always fell. The other Wemmicks would gather around and give him dots, and sometimes when he fell, his wood would get some chips on it, and then he'd get some more dots. And when he tried to explain it, it'd sound silly, and he'd get more dots. After a while, he had so many dots, he didn't want to go outside. He's afraid he'd do something dumb like forget his hat or step in a puddle, and then people would give him more gray dots. In fact, he had so many gray dots, some people would give him a dot just because he had a lot of gray dots. He deserves a lot of dots, they'd say. He's not a very good wooden person. After a while, Pocatello believed them. I'm not a good Wemmick, he'd say. Sometimes he'd go outside and hang out with other Wemmicks who had a lot of other gray dots, and he'd feel a little better about himself being around them. But one day he met a Wemmick unlike any other he'd ever met. She had no stars or dots. She was just wooden. Her name was Lucian. And it wasn't that people didn't try to give her stars or dots. They didn't stick. They just fell off. Some would admire her because she didn't have any dots, so they'd try to give her a star, but it'd just fall off. Others would look down on her because she didn't have any dots, and they'd give her a dot, but it wouldn't stay either. That's the way I want to be, thought Pocatello. So he asked the stickerless Wemmick how she did it. It's easy, she said. Every day I go see Eli. Eli? Yes, Eli, the wood carver. I sit in the workshop with him. I just sit there with him every day. Why? Why don't you go find out for yourself, she said. And with that, the Wemmick with no stickers turned and skipped away. But will he want to see me? Pocatello cried. Lucian didn't hear him. For days, Pocatello sat out at home and stared at the other wooden people giving out their stickers and just said, it's not right. And with that, he decided to go see Eli. He walked up the narrow path to the big shop, and when he entered, his eyes widened at the sight of it all. The stool was as tall as he, and he had to stretch on his tiptoes just to see the top of the workbench. Hammer was as big as his arm. "I'm not staying here," he said, and it was then he heard, "Pocatello." The voice was deep and soft. Pocatello stopped. "Pocatello, how good to see you. Come, let's have a look at you." Pocatello turned slowly and looked at the long, tall, large-bearded craftsman. "Do you know my name?" "Of course I do. I made you." Eli stooped down and picked him up and sat him on the bench. "Looks like you've been given some bad marks, Pocatello, some real bad marks." "I didn't mean to. I tried really hard. I didn't mean to. You don't have to defend yourself. I don't care who they are. I don't care what the other mimics think. It's what I think that matters. Pocatello, I think you're really special. But I can't jump high or walk fast, man. I don't sing well. Why would that matter to you?" Eli put his hands on the small wooden shoulder and says, "You matter because I made you. You're mine." Pocatello had never heard anyone look at him like this or speak to him like this, especially the carver. "Every day I've been hoping you'd come," Eli said. "I came because somebody told me somebody had no stickers." "I know. She told me about you." "Why don't the stickers stay on her?" "She's decided what I think is more important than what they think. The stickers only stick if you let them. The more you trust my love, the less you care about their stickers." "I don't think I understand." "Oh, Pocatello, you will. It'll take time, but you will. Just come and see me every day. Let me remind you how much I care." Eli lifted Pocatello off the bench and set him on the ground. "Remember, you're special because I made you, and I don't make mistakes, Pocatello." Pocatello didn't stop, just kept walking, but in his heart he said, I think Eli really means it. I think he means it." And when he said that to himself, a dot fell off. So as best I can every day, I go to my Maker, and I just let him know that I feel a little broken. And I know I'm not all right. And I just say, "Father, forgive me of my sins." And I name them, I list them, I feel them. I just give them to him. And I've learned to hear, "You're good. You're good." Father, I'm with some fellow sinners this morning. I'm with some fellow sinners. We today will not be a congregation of the pious, hiding the fact that we're sinners. We today will be a community of the forgiven, who whenever we do something, and we will, we'll acknowledge it, we'll confess it, we'll feel it, and we'll commit to be better with your help, and then we'll leave it with you. And we'll experience the grace of a God who sent his only begotten Son so that our penalty is paid. Amen. Amen.